Welcome, everyone. My name is Bert Salazar, and I am the host of the Bert Salazar Retirement Show on Facebook Live. By the way, our show is the only retirement show on Facebook Live that I know of. I've done a lot of research. I haven't seen anything out there. So I'm really excited that you're here because every single week on Wednesdays, we're going to cover a lot of information. Next week, instead of going live at noon, because we are having some challenges with Facebook Live as far as going live. I think it must be some kind of a Facebook system issue, but I'm going to do it later on, maybe at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll try one Wednesday, and then at 4 p.m., figure out which is the best way that I can bring you a lot of this information. In the meantime, I'm recording this Facebook Live, so I'll post it on my pages afterwards so you can take a look at it. So today, I just jotted a bunch of notes that I want to share with you because I think we're living through very, very interesting times, not only because of the pandemic that we're going through, but also the economic pandemic that we're going through today, and that more than likely is going to continue on for the near future anyways. So I think it was on today's Wednesday, so this is on Monday afternoon. Once a week, I host an event for all my clients. And this is an online event that I've been doing now for 3 years. One of the best decisions I ever made was to take my business virtually and online because, what is happening today, and a lot of the new people are trying to learn the new system, how to communicate online. That for me, it's old because I've been doing it for the last 3.5 years. So I'm blessed in the fact that I'm able to come to you and to communicate not only to all of my clients, but also to my entire online community that follows me through everything that I do online. So we had 15 people on the call. No, actually 17 on the call that we were actually able to see on video conferences. And we had another 18 that were calling in through their cell phone. But I was not able to see them through a video type platform. And it was interesting because we're having a conversation. I was trying to, give them some feedback as to, what I see that is happening now and, what are the changes that need to be made when it comes to a retirement standpoint and from a retirement distribution perspective. And some of the clients were saying, Bert, we're all on the same boat. And I said, time out, guys. Let's go back on this one. I said, number one, we're not all on the same boat. We're all in the same storm or in the same storm, but we're definitely not in the same boat. And what do I mean by that? Well, number one, some of us have a job, some of us don't. Some of us are getting a weekly paycheck, some of us don't. Some of the businesses are going to open in the very near future, at least in Florida. Some of them will never be open again. Some people have a guaranteed pension. Most Americans don't. So when someone says to me that we're all in the same boat, I differ with them because, yes, we happen to be in the same storm, but not all of us are on the same boat. So I think the question for all of you is, number one, you need to identify what kind of a boat you're in. Number two, what do you see the outcome of that boat in the next 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, 6 months from now? And do you have to bail out of that boat and swim ashore? Or is there something that you can do inside of that boat, to help you make sure that you're not going to sink from a business and or financial perspective? So, we started to have those conversations. All of a sudden, more and more of the people that were attending that event with me, say, Bert, you're making a lot of sense. It's actually correct. Some of us are in a better position than others. Some of us, feel really bad for others and so forth. So from a business perspective, it's important to know, what kind of a boat do you find yourself in? And what are the things that you can do in order to prepare, for what's coming? So one of the topics that I also discussed during that webinar with all my clients was, are you prepared for what's coming down the line? Are you prepared for what's coming next? And what I like to do is I want to share some of the ideas that we discussed that I wrote down, so I make sure that I cover them all with you, because you have to be prepared. At the end of the day, if you're not prepared, you're going to find yourself in a position that is going to hurt you and your family for the rest of your lives. So unemployment, number one, is going to remain high for the foreseeable future. I think we just hit this week 30 million people unemployed in the United States. Now, it seems like a long time ago, but it was only January where we actually had, from a statistical standpoint, full employment in the United States. You know, the unemployment levels back then for minorities, African Americans, Hispanics, Asian Americans, women, were actually at the lowest that it had ever been. So we have gone 360 completely from an unemployment standpoint, because today we have 30 million Americans that have filed for unemployment, and many more are filing on a weekly basis. And the world of unemployment is going to remain high for a number of months, maybe a number of years, because although our country's going to open, it's not going to open full force at the same time. It's going to open on a little by little basis, on a county by county basis, on a state by state basis. So even if you're able to open a restaurant, is the restaurant going to be able to open on a full-time basis as it did before? Not if you can only have 25% of people sitting at your tables at any given point. So that means you're also going to have 25% of the employees. You don't need 100% of the employees to cover 25% of the business that's coming in. So the rest of the employees are going to remain unemployed. Some of the restaurants are not going to open altogether, and they're actually out of business. So how is that going to impact unemployment in the near future? So that's something to consider, because all of these issues that I'm going to be sharing with you today are going to have a negative impact on what happens in your retirement life and with your retirement assets and all of the stuff that are so critical that we all pay attention to as we move forward. The second issue is that personal bankruptcies are going to remain and increase rapidly. Why? Because if people are unemployed, they're not going to be able to pay their bills. And many times the only way out that Americans have is to file personal bankruptcy. You know, many Americans that are going to file personal bankruptcy will do Chapter 7. Some may do Chapter 13 or Chapter 11 if you're in business. But, you know, most of them are going to do Chapter 7 and try to wipe out all of their debt. Now, can I blame them for that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know, how about small business bankruptcies? You know, if you own a small business in a shopping center, and because of the fact that you have been shut down for 60 days, you have lost the vast majority of your clientele. There's no money coming in. There's no business. You still have to pay your bills. You may get to a point where you're not going to be able to pay your rent inside that commercial real estate property. Therefore, the owners of their real estate property are going to come after you, and they're going to try to collect. And some are your creditors and your bill collectors. So you may have no choice but to, you know, file bankruptcy if you happen to be a small business owner. And those numbers are going to be increasing dramatically in the very near future as well. Now, home foreclosures, I feel they're going to go through the roof. And by the way, I'm not trying to get you to get scared. I'm not trying to threaten you of what's going to happen. We're going to have a financial Armageddon in the near future. We actually may, but I'm trying to give you realities, because we as Americans have a tendency to only live in the present. We don't pay attention to what happened in the past, and we very few times pay attention as to what's happening in the future. So you have to take the information that I'm giving you and apply it to yourself in the boat that you're in to see how you're going to be able to survive if all of a sudden you have a sea storm coming upon your boat very, very fast. So if you can't pay your mortgage because you don't have a job, or you're going to have to take a lesser job than the one that you're used to, and then there's so many people competing for that job, you have no idea whether you get it or not. Obviously, foreclosure is going to be a big issue that we're all going to have to deal with. And all of these concerns and all of these challenges that I am enumerating for you are going to have a negative impact on yourself, on your family, on your retirement assets, and so forth. The other issue is that the stock market is going to remain quite volatile. Now, the last few days, it has gone up, but the week before, it actually went down and it lost, 2.5%, almost 3% for the week. So the volatility of the stock market is going to continue. Your assets are going to go up and down. Now, they've been down. They're going to be down this year. They've been down. Actually, you were probably in bear market territory when it came to your retirement assets. You may have recovered a little bit, but most of you are not going to recover all of it anyways, and most of you are going to suffer drastically moving forward into the future if you're anywhere between 5 and 10 years in retirement, or you may be approaching retirement very fast at this point in time over the next 6 months to a year to maybe 18 months along those lines. So the stock market volatility is going to be a major issue that all of you are going to have to deal with. And then the question is, well, how are you going to be segmenting your retirement accounts? You know, what kind of an asset allocation are you going to do? I remember in 2008 when we had the stock market debacle, it didn't matter whether you have stocks and bonds. Bonds actually went down by an average of 40%. So where are you going to be able to find vehicles that will be able to protect you from an economic downside when it comes to stock market volatility? Now, personal income taxes are going to go through the roof. And the reason for that is that all this money that is being paid out by the U.S. government today, now a lot of it is going to be in the form of loans, but you know, what percentage of small businesses are going to be able to pay those loans? I don't care what interest rate the government is going to use. The problem is that you got to be able to produce, pay taxes, and then, you know, have a remainder so you can live, maintain your standard of living, your business, and by the same token, pay that loan back. So the only way that the government is going to be able to do this is by increasing taxes. I just looked at the latest numbers. We're actually $2.5 trillion in deficit. That means that we're spending $2.5 trillion more than what we're bringing in through taxes and revenues. So where do you think that taxes are going to go in the very near future? And what have you done with your assets in order to protect yourself and your family from the impact of higher taxations in the next year to maybe in the next several years? Another issue that nobody's talking about is we're going to have an election in November. I think it's going to be November 3rd of 2020. You know, what's going to happen along those lines? I know there's always a lot of volatility when it comes to elections. Who's going to win? Is it going to be the Trump administration and then the Republican Party, or is it going to be Joe Biden and the Democrats, or somebody else replacing Joe Biden? Who knows at this point in time? And what is going to be the impact? How is the market going to forecast, you know, all of those things moving forward? Who's going to be the best party to bring us out of this economic downtrend that we're going through today? Is it going to be the Republicans? Is it going to be the Democrats? Who knows? And by the way, I'm not talking about any party affiliation, because at the end of the day, it's all bullshit anyways. So it's all about sunrises and sunsets from a business standpoint. Anything between that and how do you feel about this person or that person, none of that matters, and nobody really cares about that. Always remember that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So that's also very, very important. So I want to talk a little bit about, well, if you're not prepared, what can you do? A good friend of mine taught me this a long time ago, and my good friend Pete in Southern California, when I lived there for 12 years, you know, he passed away of cancer, and I think about him every day. And Pete always said to me, because I was running a very large organization, and Pete said to me, Bert, don't ever get between a dog and a fire hydrant, because you're going to get sprinkled. And I took that to heart. So the question for all of you, or the statement that I want to make to all of you, is don't get between a dog and a fire hydrant, because you know what's going to happen. Don't get between your retirement assets and what's happening from an economic standpoint. So what are some of the things that you need to do? Number one, I think it's important that you start plugging all the holes in your retirement accounts. Now, you may not know what those holes look like, but somebody that specializes in tax planning and retirement distribution planning can actually help you. I can help you do that. Now, if you work with someone that you feel is more than capable, then by all means. But if you don't know anyone that can help you from a tax planning and retirement standpoint, then feel free to reach out to me. But you need to be able to plug in the holes. You need to be able to plug all the holes so that boat is not going to sink in the middle of that storm that you're going through today and maybe going through again. Because, by the way, guys, all of this is going to happen all over again. I just don't know when, but it's going to happen all over again. And there are many different ways that the market is going to drop. A pandemic being one of them, and that's the one that we're going through today. But we can have wars, we can have somebody with a finger on their nuclear weapon, we can have inflation, deflation, we can have depressions, we can have all kinds of different things throughout the world that are going to have a negative impact on your retirement assets, and there's nothing that you can do at the point in time that it happens, so you better be prepared. If taxes are going up, what are you doing? How are you going to repair that? How are you going to plug and repair that hole? You know, what percentage of your assets are going to be taxable forever? Can you create a tax-free retirement plan? And the answer is yes, but most of you are too lazy to do that. And most Americans are too lazy to do that because they don't want to shake the boat in case that it's going to tip over. Well, it's going to tip over regardless, so you might as well do something with it today. What are some of the other things that you can do if you're not prepared? You know, take a look at your current retirement accounts and create a guaranteed paycheck for life. And by the way, you can also create a sequencing of paychecks from one year to the other or one period of time to the other. One of the things that I recommend to all my clients is that when they get to the age of 65, they're going to have to plan for 3 decades in retirement. You have to plan for 30 years. Because if you're married and you're healthy at the age of 65, there's a 50% probability that one of you is going to be alive at age 93. And there's also a 25% probability that one of you is going to be alive at age 97. So how are you going to be able to plan for 3 decades in retirement if you don't have any idea how many holes you have in your boat? Now, the 3 decades of retirement, I call them the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. So between 65 and 75 is the go-go years. You're going to want to try to catch up with life. You're going to travel, you're still healthy, you're going to go all over the world, you're going to do things that you've never done before. Once you get to your mid-70s to your mid-80s, 75 to 85, you go into the slow-go years. You know, your health is not as good as it used to be the previous decade. So you're going to slow it down a little bit. Perhaps you want to stay closer to your children, to your grandchildren. You may still do a little bit of travel here and there, but not much. And then once you go into the no-go years, that's what I call the waking up in the morning on the green side of the grass. You'll be surprised how many clients that I have that are already in their mid-80s basically say to me, you know, Bert, if I can wake up on the green side of the grass every day, life is good. So the decades of retirement are going to change, and so is your retirement income. But if you're able to create guaranteed paychecks for each and every one of those 3 stages of life, and it would be the type of paycheck that you're never going to run out of, so you're never going to have to worry about running out of money before you run out of life, because you're going to have these guaranteed paychecks that no matter what happens, whether we go through 10 more pandemics, whether we go through 10 more market crashes, whether we go through another 10 wars or the war in Afghanistan continues to go for the next 30 years, you will continue to receive a guaranteed paycheck for life. I deal with a lot of public safety employees, and these are people that have worked in law enforcement at the federal, state, county, municipal, and city level. And they've been doing it for a lot of years, and now they're in retirement, so they have a guaranteed paycheck. By the way, I have asked many of them, I say, would you give up your paycheck? And they say, what, are you crazy? Me giving up my guaranteed paycheck? You must be out of your mind, Bert. And I agree with them, because no, I don't know of anyone that would give up a guaranteed paycheck. It doesn't matter whether it's a guaranteed pension from either the public sector or the private sector. It doesn't matter whether it's a Social Security benefit that you and your family are receiving and your spouse are receiving on a monthly basis. It doesn't matter whether it's a private pension that you created yourself through guaranteed paychecks and annuities. It doesn't matter. If it has the word guaranteed, it's a win-win for you, your family, your business, and your heirs in the future. So you got to be ready for that. So if you're not ready for what's coming, you got to start doing a lot of these things that I'm talking about today. Something else is, again, you have to identify, your fixed and variable expenses, and figure out which one of your fixed expenses can you do away with. Figure out, most important, out of all your variable expenses, which ones can you do away with. Now, believe me, I don't want to have you go on a financial diet for the rest of your life, because nobody goes on a diet for the rest of their lives. But I think it's important, as you go through this exercise today, that you figure out what are some of the variable expenses that you can do away with. Sometimes you may not be able to do away with that variable expense, but you can reposition that variable expense to something that may be even more important from a retirement standpoint. Another point that is very critical for you to consider, and this one you're going to have to get out of your own way. And you have to be able to simplify in order to multiply. And here's what I mean by that. I have a number of clients that are now either living abroad in Europe. I have probably 6-7 clients that have moved to Spain over the last 2.5 years, more or less, maybe 3 years. All of them are excited. They love living in Spain. The cost of living is the lowest. Tremendous way of living. Medicine is very good over there. The dollar goes a long, long way. You can rent an apartment. You can buy a piece of property at next to nothing. The US dollar continues to be very, very strong. And there are other parts of Europe. I'm just not talking, not just Spain, but other parts of Europe that you can do so. One of the common denominators that all of these clients have, because I deal with them on an annual basis, is that they say, Bert, once we made that decision, we decided to simplify to multiply. Now, it didn't say it in those terms, but that's exactly what they meant. That's just my statement. So they wanted to reduce their necessities. They wanted to enjoy life. They wanted to be able to travel throughout Europe. They want to be able to simplify their standard of living, especially when it came to the retirement accounts. They didn't want to have to be checking their statements every single day or going online and checking their retirement accounts every single day. They wanted to enjoy life. Many of these clients have done some of the things that I've recommended them to. By the way, or in the next 12 to 18 months, my family and I are moving to Spain, and we're going to live there. And the reason why I can do that is because all my business is online. So as long as I have Wi-Fi and I have a good laptop in front of you, I can do business anywhere in the world, because I do tax planning, I do retirement distribution planning, and all of those things I can do online. So it makes sense. And that's something that I'm looking forward to, because my mom was from Spain. So I want to be able to give something back from that perspective. So again, those are things that are important to note. And the last thing that I want to share with you is that you got to cut the umbilical cord from the definition of insanity. And this is something that the vast majority of Americans continue to stick to. And the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again while expecting a different result. You all know that's not going to happen, but you keep doing the same thing over and over again. And the challenge with doing the same thing over and over again is that if you do that, then you have to be able to get used to failure. You're going to have to be able to get used to financial failure. You're going to have to be able to live under a tremendous amount of stress. What am I going to do next? How am I going to find additional income? Where's going to be my job? You know, what's going to happen if my spouse dies? You know, we're getting 2 Social Security benefits, and all of a sudden, if he or she dies, I'm going to lose one of those Social Security benefits. How am I going to replace that liability? Which assets? What if I get sick and I need to pay for long-term care, either for myself or for my spouse? You know, are my assets going to be in a sufficient position where they're going to be able to cover all of these eroding factors like taxes, inflation, stock market volatility, interest rate volatility, you know, propensity to consume, long-term care issues, healthcare issues, all of those things? So you think that you have your assets right now in a position that they can do that? Absolutely not. But most Americans continue to follow the definition of insanity. If you do it the right way, you're going to do it the same way that I was taught in the Marine Corps, especially when I went to boot camp. You're going to have to be able to adapt. You're going to have to be able to adjust, and you're going to have to be able to improvise. And you're going to have to do that on a sequential basis. Now, if you do what I have just covered, chances are you're going to be able to enjoy a really successful retirement life and a guaranteed retirement life. And isn't that what we have all, you know, strived to do for many, many years? That's why, you know, we have worked so hard. We have put money away. We have invested, you know, to get to the summit of retirement. And all of a sudden now we're going to die halfway down the mountain. No, you don't want to do that from a business perspective. I remember when I went to ITS, Infantry Training School, when I joined the 1st Marine Division out of Camp Pendleton, California. There was a training cycle that we went through that it was called Control Chaos. Now, in the private sector, the word control and the word chaos don't go together. But in the military, in the Marine Corps, it does. And the reason being is that, you know, life is good until the first grenade goes off and then everything goes to hell. Well, as Marines, you know, we were trained how to react, how to make the right decision at the right time and for the right reasons under incredible and very chaotic conditions. And that's why we had training called Control Chaos. How do you marry the two, and how do you maximize the opportunity of both and minimize all of those liabilities? So, you know, for those of you that want to reach out to me, and by the way, if you're listening to this Facebook Live, please share it. Make sure that you make some comments. We are the only Facebook Live community that is actually talking about retirement. So this is something very, very important to all of you, and I will continue every single week to bring topics of importance that I feel are needed. And if you want me to discuss or research a specific topic, just put it on my page or put it on a note as a messenger on a note and send it to me, and I'll be more than happy to discuss it because I'm here for you. But for those of you that, well, if you're a client, you already know how to get a hold of me. But for those of you that are on my online community, if you want to get a hold of me, feel free to reach out to me at 786-766-1042. Let me repeat that again. Area code 786-766-1042. You can also send me an email at Bert, B-E-R-T, at bertsalazar.com, BERTSALAZAR.com. And always remember that my goal for each and every one of you is to kind of help you change the way that you do things, because when you change the way that you do things, the things that you see change. So once again, thanks very much for your time, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.